for today. Can we judge between right and wrong? Are we allowed to do that? Well, that's the question for today. Let's look at this picture. Now, let me give you a hint. One of these pictures is a real one, one of them's a fake. Which one do you think is a fake? Yeah, the left. But a guy put this picture on the left of the Pope in this, whatever kind of coat that is, on the internet, and millions of people saw it and thought that really was him. But it was a construction worker in Chicago who did a deep fake AI and made that. It's not really him. This is him. Now here's the question. How do we know what, if we, they say seeing's believing. How do we know what to believe if we can't even believe our eyes? Because now with AI, they can take you and put you anywhere with anybody and make you look like whatever you want to look like. Also, scammers used AI to clone a girl's voice, called the mother and said, "We've got your daughter and here's her voice and we want $1 million ransom." They didn't really have her. So what do we believe? They can clone your voice, they can make you look different. What do we believe? A Belgian man earlier this month killed himself. He was having an interaction with his AI chatbot. And the chatbot, the AI, this computer, AI, artificial intelligence, found out from talking with, we'll call him Pierre, that he was upset about climate change. And so it told him that to help save the world, he ought to go ahead and kill himself. And he did. Because the AI chatbot told him, "Then you'll be with me and I'll take care of climate change after you're gone." The guy was married, had 2 kids, a good job, and when his wife said he wouldn't have done this if the computer AI hadn't told him to do it. Who do we believe? What do we believe? There's a lack of, I don't know if you know, but you do. We're getting more and more cynical, maybe rightfully so. Trust is down in every area. Religious leaders are trusted less, medical leaders are trusted less, business leaders are trusted less, political leaders, well, we didn't trust them anyhow. But people are trusted less. We don't know what to believe. We don't know who to believe and what is truth. The battle for truth seems bigger every day. So I want to talk about a sermon this week and next week about a passage of a sermon Jesus taught called the Sermon on the Mount. And what I think is one of the most misunderstood passages in the Bible. Let's read it first. It's in Matthew 5 verses, Matthew 7. Do not judge others. Or if you remember, or many of you learned it like I did, King James. Judge not, lest you be judged. Judge not others, and you will not be judged, for you be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, "Let me help get rid of that speck in your eye," when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrite, first get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Now this is probably, to me, one of the most well-known, least understood verses in the Bible. I knew this verse before I ever went to church, because my dad would quote it. When my mother would tell him, or his father would tell him he needed to quit drinking so much, he'd say, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." And he didn't talk like that, but he wanted to make it funny. I get, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." What was he doing? He said, "You can't judge me whether I'm drinking too much." And this is the way a lot of people interpret that. You can't tell me anything, right or wrong, because then you're judging and you shouldn't be judging. So the question is that what Jesus is trying to say? Jesus is definitely saying something important, and we want to understand what it is. The word it is used for judge can mean anything from analyze to condemn. I think we understand from the context that Jesus has talked about this passage about condemning. Like you're making the judgment and sending him to prison and all this and other stuff. I do not think that's what Jesus is talking about here in this passage. That it's wrong to say whether something is right or whether it's wrong. And so because we're going to be saying that we can't judge things or make discernment or decisions on anything. Nobody really believes that, but some try to act like they do. if it's speaking about them. If somebody came and stole the dog you love, would you not be able to say, well, that's right or wrong? Well, yeah, you would. That's wrong. Give me my dog back. I love my dog. Let's get my dog. Somebody broke into your house to beat you up and your family. You're not allowed to say, well, that's right or wrong? Of course you are. Are we not allowed to prosecute shoplifters that are overwhelming some cities in America today? Some think not. No, we can't prosecute them. 4 Walmarts you saw are closing in Chicago because they've lost tens of millions of dollars. And some people gathered together and said, you can't take our Walmarts away. They tell people to quit going in there and stealing everything. You know who pays for shoplifters? You do. And I do. Do you think those corporate heads are up there saying, well, I'll just have less of a bonus this year? No. They're raising the price. You pay the price for shoplifters. So I absolutely believe we, yes, can say things are right or wrong and deal with it. I think the difference between these words helps us. These are the dictionary definitions of 2 words. Here's the word judgmental, if I'm at the right place. Tending to make quick and excessively critical judgments, especially moral ones. That's what I think Jesus is talking about here. Being judgmental, just quickly criticizing, looking at everybody and saying, you're and judgmental. That's what I want to talk about next week, because I believe that's really what this passage is talking about. Being overly critical, judgmental. Whereas the word judgment, the ability to judge, to make a decision, to form an opinion objectively, wisely, especially in matters of action, good sense. You know what? That's what we need more of. Jesus is absolutely not saying we don't need that. I believe we need more of. Let me give you a couple questions. Does it even matter to discover what is true? Does that even matter whether it's true or not? See, again, some people will say, no, it doesn't even matter. Many people today believe that their emotions, their own anxieties, is how they judge everything. Well, it doesn't matter what really happened, it matters how I feel. Well, I feel different on a subject, different in the same day. One day, and then I don't think that's too good. So which is right? We can't go by our feelings. Feelings are good. God gave us feelings. But we can't judge by our feelings. Truth is not according to our feelings. Or does everyone have their own truth? See, this is what you have your truth and I have my truth. You try to say, well, this is right, you shouldn't have done it. We got proof right here where you have your truth and I have my truth. Now, we don't believe that really. We try to say that when it's something. Here's a message I almost preach, and I may yet. Victimhood. Everybody's a victim. We identify as victims. Now, we're all truly victims sometimes. Sometimes somebody may cheat us, lie about us, talk about us behind the back. Some people are victims in other ways, of crime. Okay, that's right. When you are a victim, that's the truth. But to identify as a victim is a whole other animal. I'm a victim. I'm a woman in America. I'm a gay person. I'm an immigrant. I'm a victim. Eventually we're all victims. We come identifying we're all victims. I was raised poor. I'm from Appalachia. And we all become victims, and when you are a victim, you think that you're justified in doing whatever you want. Well, I'm a victim, so I can steal your stuff. I can beat you up. I'm a victim. See how dangerous that is? And that's what we're having in America today, more and more. Victim identity. Very dangerous, very wrong, and evil in the end. We've got to be aware of that. But some people, that's their truth. So who do we believe? Who do we trust? You can't even trust all preachers, can you? Of course not, and you never could. I'll talk about a verse Jesus says that you never could trust all preachers. So who do you trust? That's an important question now. When we see this stuff on the internet, well, it's on the internet, so I trust it. Fox News said it, so I trust it. CNN said it, so I trust it. If you answered yes to theirs, can I please sell you some swampland in Arizona after this? because it's run by humans. It's hard to find out who to trust. And how can I find out what is true? These are the important questions of today, and getting more and more important. The battle for truth is on us now, and we absolutely cannot swallow these people who know this much of the Bible and say, judge not lest ye be judged. They don't know what they're talking about. Jesus is not saying there's never any judgment about anything. He is not saying that that means we can tolerate evil. So let's look at some in this same message. All right, number one, we are to discern dogs and pigs. Say what? Jesus said, don't waste what is holy on people who are unholy. Now, the New Living Translation is trying to help us here. The literal Greek, it says, don't give that which is holy to the dogs. But what they're talking about, and so, because they thought we wouldn't understand what he's saying, and probably don't, those kind of dogs, that word is wild dogs, scavenger dogs, which were unholy in the Jewish religion, and everybody knew what he was talking about. The same thing, he said, don't throw your pearls to pigs. Pigs, again, were unholy, unclean animals. The wild dogs and the pigs, you're not going to give holy to the unclean animals. They will trample the pearls and turn and attack you. Now, he's not really talking about dogs and pigs. He's talking about presenting your truth to people. What is he asking us to do? He's asking us to discern, to judge. That there's some people that you will go to who will be mockers. They don't want to hear you, and you understand that, so you turn aside and you even shake the dust off your feet, he said. He said, look for people of peace, people who are open to talking to you, hospitable even, and just keep trying to help them. Now, I'm not getting into a whole thing about evangelism here. What I'm telling you is, he is telling you to discern between people. Use your brain to make judgment calls. That's the very next verse after those first 5 verses. All right, number 2, we are to discern false prophets. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep, but are really vicious wolves. Again, this is the same sermon. The Sermon on the Mount, and he's saying there's some people who come and are religious teachers who are liars. That was back then, and it is true now. I hate it. I saw an Easter sermon, a piece of an Easter sermon this week by a guy who got up and said, now I'm going to tell you what the resurrection is. He said the resurrection is a law they made in our state to promote abortion. That is the resurrection. What a lying idiot. And he's a preacher. The resurrection is Jesus Christ conquered death. Had nothing to do with abortion. Whether you're pro or anti, and I'm anti, but that's not the point. The point is he's taking the resurrection, trivializing it to make it a political issue, and he is supposed to be a pastor of a Christian church. There are false prophets, false teachers all over. I hate it. I wish it. And no wonder some people say, I give up trying. Can you see how good the devil's strategy works? Get this guy lying here, this guy lying here, this guy lying here, and they say, what's the use? And then we think they're all liars. They're not. I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of good people teaching the truth out there, good, sincere Christians, good, sincere preachers, but some of them are false, and we are to discern. We don't just listen to everybody, even if they're on television, and swallow everything whole. Match it up to the Bible. Discernment, judgment to find the truth. Number 3, God will judge. So judgment is not bad because God will judge. Not everyone, again, the same sermon. Not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of my Father in heaven will enter. On Judgment Day, many will say, Lord, we prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, performed many miracles in your name. And I'll reply, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's law. The sad truth is not everybody's going to heaven. And some here even had an appearance of being religious. I'm not trying to scare anybody away and say, you're not ready to go. I think these people actually knew it, they were fakes. But they had an appearance. They wanted to virtue signal that they were religious, which a lot of people want to do that. So I put here some false ideas, and I know you guys know the difference, but for us just to be reminded, we need to continue to be reminded because we're assaulted with lies so much. False ideas of becoming a Christian. Salvation by heritage. My parents were Christians, so yeah, I'm a Christian. When I was a child, 90% of the people in America said they were Christians. When I got saved as a teenager and I saw that 90% figure, I said, they must be in another state. But 90% of the people I know are not serving God. So I think already there was a lot of people who had an appearance of religion, or they went to church some, or their parents did, but that doesn't make it. Because whatever your parents were, whether they were atheists or whether they were Christians, you have a whole different, it's up to you. Salvation by hair, salvation by sincerity is a false belief. It doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're sincere. Well, now that's a false idea. It's false in anything. Let's say you went and had a $300 check, you went and had it cashed, and the teller gave you back $200. And you came back to your wife or husband and say, you got the $300? Well, I really only got $200. The teller made a mistake, but they seem so sincere. Would you let them have your $100 because they were sincere? No, I wouldn't either. Nobody would. We know that sincerity is good, but it's not enough if it's not in the truth. Salvation by subtraction. I'll give up all my habits. Now, if you've got bad habits, let's say you're just are a very critical person like we're going to talk about. You just run everybody down all the time. You're just always negative, and you did this bad, you did that bad. That's a bad habit. And if you get rid of that, good, I'm glad. That doesn't make you a follower of Jesus. You're a follower of Jesus, and you hope you do that. So salvation by subtraction is not enough. I'll get rid of these. Salvation by service. I'll do a lot of good things. I believe in doing good things. That doesn't make you a Christian, so that's not good enough. Salvation by shrine. I'll be religious and go to church. That doesn't mean it either. You know, if Hitler walked in and went to church, that make him a Christian? No. That's not it. So it's not because you go to church. And here's what a new one to me, salvation by death. I see all the time people say, you'll see some post on the internet about some famous person that died. Well, he's up there racing with Jesus now. He never had everything about God while he was alive, but now that he's dead, boy, he's up in heaven. I'm not saying I know yes or no, but I'm saying just dying ain't good enough. Because Jesus just said, you see that in Matthew 7? Not everybody will go to heaven. So, let's make sure we understand those differences about God judging. All right, Jesus, number 4, and this is the really important one. Jesus is not saying that we can't name what is right or wrong. I want to read a couple verses here. Matthew 5, same sermon, 5, 6, and 7 is all the same sermon. So if you ignore the least commandment and teach others to do the same, you'll be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But anyone who obeys God's law and teaches them, they will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus is saying that even the least of his commandments is important. It is not to be ignored. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how you live. He is not saying that. I want to add a couple of other verses that are not in his sermon. Hebrews chapter 5. Solid food is for those who are mature, who through training have the skill to recognize the difference between right and wrong. To recognize the difference between right and wrong. When you're mature, that's what you're doing. You're discerning, is this right or is this wrong? It is not. Jesus is not saying that we never judge what is right or wrong. And that's silly. We know it really isn't. We've read the Bible. We know that. The people who have this thin knowledge of about 2 verses in the Bible say, you Christians, you're judging everybody. Because they don't know what they're talking about. Because when you really read the Bible, and by the way, they don't live that either. They know there's some things that are right and wrong. Everybody does. It's got sense. And we have to, and growing mature is that. It's not believing everything you hear, but knowing there's a difference between right and wrong and learning which is right and which is wrong. God help us to have that. One more, test everything that is said. In 1 Thessalonians. Test everything that is said. Hold on to what is good. Stay away from every kind of evil. It is not against Matthew 7:1, judge not. It is not against that when we say murder is sin. Adultery is sin. Stealing is sin. It's not against that when we say that is right and that is wrong. And we need to get a hold of that, hold on to that. So, what do we do today in America? Push back. Don't stand there and swallow everything everybody tries to say, because everybody's trying to say now that everything they want to do is right. And it's okay, and you have no right to tell me that I'm wrong. I say push back against that. Now, you have a right to believe that lie if you want, but I don't have to believe it and accept it because you believe it. If a man says he's a woman, I don't have to agree with him and say, you're a woman. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am not going to do that. I'm not going to go with their pronouns. I'm not going to say go to their weddings and say that's love, because that's not love. I am not going to do that. Because I am letting them be deceived and going along with the deception when I do that. And so we got to push back, or how are they going to learn? Because there's a whole lot of confusion out there right now, especially among young people. And we don't need to just sit there and say, well, if I just keep my head down, maybe they won't come after me. Boy, that's not good. That's certainly not courageous. Now, I'm not saying to be mean or hateful or judgmental, but I am saying don't go along with what is wrong. Push back, say what is right, or how else will he know? If we don't speak the truth, who will? Now, I might sound meaner than him. I don't talk like this to people individually, okay? I don't go up to an individual, you. Yeah. And I'm not asking you to either. You can do it kindly to a person you know when they ask you a question. Don't go around slapping everybody. I'm not talking about that. But I am saying speak the truth and live the truth. The truth is important. Lastly, there are moral and spiritual truths because there is a God. If there is no God, then yeah, do what you want. How can I tell you what is wrong? If there is no God, then there is really no truth. There's no moral truth. There's still biological truth, but there's no moral truth of that adultery is sin or that stealing is sin. If I can get away with it, then there's no God. But because there is a God, there is a moral truth. Because He set it up. This is my Father's world. He made it. C.S. Lewis said this. When we say there is no right and wrong if there's no God, he said, my argument as God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. And it does, doesn't it? Sometimes the universe seems cruel and unjust. Life is not fair. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? See what he's saying? If there's a God, there's a standard, there's a right and wrong. If there wasn't. And so when we see all this injustice, we know that's wrong. Because there is a God who set up a right and wrong. If there is no God, there is no blame or praise because there's no truth. You can't blame somebody for what they do. That's the way it's just they can't have it. Because if there's no God, there's really no free will. You can't blame the guy who busts in your house and steals your stuff. Or you can't praise a person who does good. They couldn't help it. If there is no God and there is no truth. If there is no God and there's no truth, there is no justice or fairness. What is justice if there's no God? What you say it is? Hitler said justice was kill as many of the Jews as he wanted. That was just to them. They believed they were right. And who am I to tell them they're wrong if there is no God? All these people do it. It's not because they believe it's wrong. They're doing it because they believe it's right. We have to help find the truth. There's no desire to be a better person if there is no God and no truth. What's the sense in that? Jesus said to the people who believed in Him, you are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, if you go down, let's say you want to go, get on the interstate and go to Nashville. But you get out there and you're talking and you're not playing at some of these exit ramps are sort of confusing. And the next thing you know, you're going east towards Knoxville. and you realize what you're doing. Wait a minute, I went the wrong way. What do?
Turn around.
Turn around. Oh, wait a minute, let me get off the next exit. Don't turn around right there in the interstate. But let me get off right the next exit, and I'm going to turn around. And that's what salvation is. We realize I'm going the wrong way. I'm living my life without God, doing what I want to do, which includes sin, selfishness. I've got to turn around and now go in the right direction as a follower of Jesus Christ. He has forgiven me those wrong things, and I turn around. But people who will say, I'm a follower of Jesus, and keep going to Knoxville, and you ask them, I thought you were headed to Nashville. Oh yeah, I am. I'm a Nashville traveler as I head to Knoxville. You'll say, let me out. And that's what some people try to say. I'm a follower of Jesus, and they do what they want. They never did turn their life around. And Jesus said, you never did mean it. It's not that you say by the good works, but if you meant it, you turn your life around. And how do we know which way to go? The truth. We judge what is the truth. Jesus ended his sermon, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7, one of the hardest sermons you ever heard, was the Sermon on the Mount. He ended it with this. He talked about two people. One built their house on the rock. And then a storm came. The rain, the wind, and the house was firm. Because it had a good foundation on rock. He said, that's the ones who listen to me and follow what I say. There is a truth. When their life has that foundation of truth, the storm will come, they'll be okay. But then there was another people who would build their house on sand. And when the storm came, that sand started shifting, and the house came down. Because their house was not built on a right foundation. That is the battle in America. Are we built on the foundation of God's truth, the bedrock, or are we going to build on a foundation of sand and no truth? And when you build on a foundation of sand, when the storm comes, and it's coming, your life, your family, your church, your country will fall. I'm not trying to be somebody who's predicting what's going to happen. I'm just telling you that's what Jesus said. When you build your life not on the truth, eventually it's going to fall. This is very important, that we stand for the truth that God gave us. For us, for our nation, the world. Let's bow our heads.